Right. Inspiration Nation, hello. Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast. Ryan Boniface with me. Jose Noya sadly is not with me. We are without our inspirational guru. But how are you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Lee in our group chat earlier dubbed us the Dream Team.
We are the
So
Dream
I don't
Team.
know. I don't know if what episode we are of the Dream Team podcast, but there's been a few of us now. So
Oh, I'm
um,
going to do a little sub listing of the Dream Team podcast.
the Dream Team podcast. That'll make Joe feel bad. We've got to create team names for when you're not here and when I'm not here as well.
So I started off being nice there with calling him our guru as well, which obviously I do believe, but normally we like
Mm,
a bit of the bants. So, Joe, if you're
indeed, we do.
listening, we actually don't miss you whatsoever, but I felt like compelled to say something. Right, Ryan, I believe you have a quote. So, what are we talking about? So
I do have a quote. It's a quote from a Stoic philosopher who lived between 50 and 135 AD. And
is it Joe?
I'm going to try and I'm going to no, unfortunately not. I'm going to try and pronounce the name of Epictetus. And I've
Okay.
probably butchered that for those of you that know your Stoic philosophers. But the quote is, it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And we have had loads of conversations about this, so I thought we may as well drag another one out of it. Um,
Do you know what?
I th-
And I'll let's say if I was going to make a subject up for today off the top of my head, my thing I was going to talk about fits this perfectly. So carry
Look at
on,
that.
and then I'll give you my example.
There is a reason why we call it the Dream Team.
Indeed, we
Definite
are like the
reason why we call it a
same
Dream
brain.
Team. So the quote obviously talks about remaining in control of what you can control, and we've had really in-depth conversations over the plethora of episodes we've done this through. But being able to understand what you can control and what you can't, and letting the things that you can't control go is, in my view, one of the most powerful tools you can have to live a um easy life's the wrong word, but a less challenging life, so to speak. But I think a lot of people get hung up on the things that they can't have any involvement over. Oh, when am I going to hear back for that job interview? Oh, when am I going to be able to hear back from my doctor about X, Y, Z? That one's probably a bit different because obviously there's maybe some serious connotations to that one. But I didn't get that promotion at work, or I didn't get the house that I submitted an offer for, and things like that. I'm a firm believer that coincidences don't exist, but I'm also a firm believer that fate exists and everything happens for a specific reason. Um, whether or not you know what that reason is or what it isn't. So, a bit of background kind of around the quote and the author themselves is that the philosopher themselves was born into slavery and endured quite a lot of hardship throughout their life, sorry, yet became one of the most influential Stoic philosophers of their time. His teachings focus on separating what's within our control from what's outside of it. And for those of you that are regular listeners to our podcast, you'll know that, again, kind of touching on the same point here, is that we try our best to kind of show how we try and deal with that and whether we are successful at it or not. I know that I am quite bad at letting the things that I can't control go. But I think I'm getting better at dealing with that than what I was 5, 10 years ago. Um, the quote kind of captures the heart of what Stoicism kind of stands for. Life will inevitably present difficulties, setbacks, and unfair situations, and it's how you approach those rather than mumbling about the spilt milk, so to speak, is kind of what can help you find the solution to your problem perhaps quicker, or face things in a certain way that might make you um, combat the situation in a way that comes out more successfully for you, or as successfully as you can make it. Um, the quote also kind of talks about what shapes your happiness and growth, and that isn't the event itself, but it's the journey. And again, we've had loads of conversations on this podcast around that specifically as well. Um, and if you want kind of a more modernized view of it, you can't control the cards that you're dealt if you're playing poker, but you can decide the decisions you make once you have the cards in your hand. And I think a lot of people, in my experience, and certainly the way that I used to address things, is that I used to try and control, try and deal with what I could and couldn't control in the same way. I tried to fix things that I couldn't control that were either unfixable, at the time, or I was easily making worse by trying to fix doing it that way. It's very difficult to let things go, especially in the heat of the moment or in the heat of battle, so to speak. But I think being able to take that step back, almost having an out of body experience, is the kind of way I try and have it now. Is that I try and step out of myself and kind of say, what can I do with this? What can I not do with this? I think quotes like this and reminding yourself of these things are so important on being able to, or for me, being able to compartmentalize situations and scenarios I find myself in really well. I've tried to do an opposite Joe and throw as much preamble onto it as I can to give Lee a bit of time to think. But I actually think if I'd have thrown it to him straight away, he'd have had quite a lot to talk about.
As a
So
rare, I don't know about a lot, but I've had something which was just funny, and it ties exactly with what I was going to talk about if you didn't have a subject. So, and your bit there was really good because there's a, and I notice this more when you talk now. There's a lot more retrospective thoughts on yourself. So it's like the way I deal with this now is or what I'm trying to do is but I would
sure.
have. And that's, that's where it really kicks in, that self-coaching bit. So I had a moment today in a similar way where something happened and then I thought about it and I was like, that would be a really good thing to talk about Joe and Ryan when something comes up like it. And here we are a mere 3 or 4 hours later, I'd say. So today, as well, I don't know if I've mentioned it or not, but I live in a little small place. There's only about 20,000 people, little town. But I had to not be a country mouse today and I had to be a city mouse and go into London. So went into London for a workshop thing, finished about lunchtime, and I was going to come home because I had some meetings. And I was where we were. They were like, "Oh, do you want to stay for some lunch, etc., etc." I was like, "No, I need to get back. I've got a meeting at 3. I really want to get back for." So I did in my head, get back for 3, and I had to get across from one side of London to the other on the joy that it's a tube, and then jump on my train. So I'm getting towards the tube, and train pulled in as I'm getting to the station, and there was that moment of, right, am I going to run for the doors to see if I make it, or am I going to be slow and casual and hold back and wait for the next one? Which would have been my normal go-to, but I was like, nah, sod it, I'm going to go. So I made a run for the doors. Beep, 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 beep starts, which is the sign of the doors closing. I'm like, I'll just jump through the door and get on the train.
Superman.
I jump into the doorway. Doors literally, I couldn't have timed it any better for the doors literally shutting on my shoulders.
Oh no!
So
Did
like,
you got in?
got
You must have got in.
So the doors bounced open again as I'm like through the doors, and I did get in. But I think it looked
Nice.
the way far more painful than I thought those doors would be. They don't just gently bounce off me; they like crunched me, and I'm like, and then open back out again. Now there was a time ages ago. I was going to start this with a different story. So way back when I was, I don't know, 22, 23, something like that. In the company I worked for at the time, we moved into, I say a different office, we didn't. We moved into a different area of the building, new desks, blah, blah, moving everything in, getting it all set up. I opened the drawers that are on the desk and they weren't clipped at the back. So literally as I opened it, the whole drawer just flung out and hit the floor. Now at the time, as a young introvert, I don't know why, it really embarrassed me. Like I went bright red, and as some sort of embarrassment reaction, I just started talking really loudly about things and had this almost mini meltdown about this thing that happened where it just like, and then I'm like, I just want to get swallowed. Now, I look back at it now, it's like my drawer fell out. That wasn't even my fault. Someone just didn't set up the desk properly. But at the time, it was like big embarrassment. And I think there's a lot of time where I'd be very wary of being the centre of attention. Like, this crowd was, the tube was crowded. So I jumped on. There's a couple of people there. I could see they looked at me and then kind of looked at each other and giggled. And there's a guy in front and he was like, "Oh, you all right, mate?" And actually I just like, phew, made it. And I looked at him and went, I didn't intend it to be quite as dramatic as that, but at least I made it, laughed it off, and then went back to doing what I was doing on my phone, checking emails and whatever, and didn't faze me whatsoever. Whereas there's a time, I think, where that would have been like a mortifying situation, and that happened to me. But I think I had the self-assurance and the confidence that, yeah, that was stupid, but that's probably happened to 100 other people. And actually, I could just, laugh it off, make a carry on like nothing had happened, which I think was so different, from where I'd been. And the only difference in that made that reaction that turned what might have been an instant that I, could have ruined the whole rest of my day in terms of I feel stupid now, blah, 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 etc. to a moment that 2 seconds later I didn't even really care about. And I kind of took the power back from that, people having a laugh, to I made a joke out of it. And it's my self-confidence and my self-assurance. And we talked about it before, but I wish I could have had this level of that 20 years ago, which I didn't. And it's taken me a long time to build it up. But we talk a lot about self-assurance, self-confidence, not worrying about what other people think. All of those, that's where a lot of the power comes from in things. And it was just a good observation moment for me that, like you said, about, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to that. And I could have gone a million different ways with that. And I think I went the best way that kind of just made it into a non-event.
Yeah.
Didn't knock my confidence, didn't ruin my day, didn't throw me off. All of that.
Do you know what I see? When you say that you would be mortified in the past of that, the last, well, I don't want to say since I turned 30 a couple of months ago, but maybe the last year or so, that kind of embarrassment filter has kind of worn off of me as well a little bit. There used to be things that I would never ever have associated myself with previously that now I'm like, fuck it, let's see what happens. It's funny. But my kind of one of the things I always fall back to with quotes like this and control and things like that is, and it is something that you once told me, and it's something that applies to the job that I do and a lot of people do, because it isn't specific to the sector that we work in. But you once told me, and I don't think this was on the podcast, but you once told me that you used to have a habit of, if somebody sent you a shirty email and you wanted to reply with a shirty email, you'd type it out and you wouldn't send it. And then you'd go back to it after half hour and you take a bit out. And you go back to it after another half an hour and you take a bit out. And maybe you tweak a little bit of it, and maybe you get the emotion's kind of worn off of you a little bit, and you rephrase the email until it resembles something that looks like a supportive response that might get your point across a bit better than perhaps what it was going before. And I actually think that's such a symbolism of, I'm not really sure that's a word, but I'm going to claim that as a word. Such a symbolism of, in my view of Stoicism, of you've been dealt a crap hand. The initial response for a lot of people in life is to flippantly reply to that outcome, perhaps with an emotional stance of defending yourself or defending your team if it's a professional thing, or defending your area, or whatever that looks like. And to have the patience, restraint, I don't really know what the best word is, but something along those lines of being able to...
Discipline's the word you're looking for.
Discipline, sorry, that is exactly the word I'm looking for. To have the mental discipline and physical discipline to go, nope, I'm not biting on that yet. I'll bite and get all my frustration out into it, but I'm not going to put somebody in the to part of my email, and I'm not going to click send. And then after an hour, I'll revisit it after I've had a call, or I've had a cup of tea, or I've had a sandwich, or whatever, and I've calmed down. And I think that's such a resemblant way of dealing with issues that you don't particularly like when they land across your desk or on your table or whatever that looks like, is writing those things down, which can be therapeutic, by the way. And I think a lot of people that get really heavily frustrated or very angry find that they get a lot of relief from writing things down and throwing them away. I actually watched a Simpsons episode the other month where it's actually one of the very, very new ones. So I don't know if you've seen this, where Marge Simpson is known as the town's most friendly person. She wins an award for being the friendliest person in Springfield, until they have a house party to celebrate her winning that award, and somebody finds a box in her walk-in wardrobe, closet, whatever you want to call it, that is full of angry letters that she's written about every person in the town that's done her wrong, that she's never ever sent. And she was very, very in the episode they talk very, very much about how that is a cathartic way of letting your emotions go, is by sending a crappy text message, or not sending, drafting a crappy text message or a crappy email or a crappy letter, and then not sending it, because you've got your emotion out. The emotion doesn't release when you click the send button. The emotion releases when you smash the space bar and write your words. And some people confuse the two. And I think being able to smash those words down, then revisit it and go, no, that's too harsh, or that's too aggressive, or that's too rude, or whatever, and shape it to be something that is constructive and supportive for what you want to achieve. I think if everybody in life could act that way, I think a lot of things would be solved a lot sooner. And it's something that always resonates with me that you've told me that once, and it's something that I try my best to follow as best I can. Do I get it right every time? And that's also something we talk about a lot on this podcast. No, but acknowledging that and understanding why that is and trying to improve that for the next time is so important to self improvement.
All about
Continue
100%.
continuous improvement, aggregation of marginal gains, all that stuff that we've spoken about over the last few months, all adds up to a really similar result if you can apply it in the right way. And that is my time.
You saw my cue. We've got 2 minutes left on the timer. So I like this. And I guess for me, takeaways, the lesson here, the thing I'd like to take people to take away from this is you create your own reality. My two situations, one where I became for a short amount of time and with good humour and everything, but I became a figure of fun in one and a non-event in the other, wasn't about what happened in either scenario. It was about how I reacted to it. What you said with the email thing, what I said to you that you said about the email thing, again, you control people's perception of you through responses, what you do, everything, and how you feel about it, what that process is to go from frustrated to constructed, and how your mindset is and how quickly you work through that. All of that, you not only you're in control of, you create your reality through all of this, and it's about being aware of it and taking control and not letting things control you, whether you can deal with it or not. Like you said, the actual event might be out of your control, but how you react to it isn't, and that is what shapes your reality for you and externally. And it's a superpower. Use it.
That is our time.
Right.
Quick, before we cut off.
Inspirationation.co.uk. Thanks, everyone. Back again next week. 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation.
Inspiration Nation. Catch you guys later. I think you've got about 25 seconds.
In which case, it was very good to catch up with you as always.
Yes, and you, mate. Yes.
And
You staying out for a beer?